Hello and welcome to Worldwide Canadian. I'm Tim Clark. Today I want to bring you up to date on what Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is doing on the world stage, particularly in relation to the two major international crises that are capturing global attention, the situation in Venezuela and the ongoing war in Ukraine. Over the past few days, Carney has been traveling and talking with world leaders, most recently in Paris, where he joined allies to pursue security guarantees for Ukraine as that conflict enters its fourth year. These discussions are part of a broader effort to coordinate support among members of what some officials are calling the Coalition of the Willing. It's an informal grouping of countries focused on advancing peace and security for Ukraine through diplomatic, economic, and potentially future security arrangements. Now, just as Carney was stepping onto the world stage in Paris, global attention was drawn to a dramatic development in Venezuela, the capture and removal of President Nicolas Maduro by U.S. forces. This extraordinary event has reverberated across international politics, raising legal, moral, and strategic questions about sovereignty, regional stability, and the future of Venezuelan governance. While some on the right say that the people of Venezuela support this action by the Americans, a recent poll found almost 90% of people disapprove of a military incursion and the subsequent running of the country by the United States. In other words, they're happy the dictator is gone, they just don't like the fact that the U.S. invaded the country to do it. In response, Carney spoke to reporters in Paris and he posted statements reinforcing Canada's long-standing position on Venezuela. He called the removal of Maduro welcome news, framing it as an opportunity for democratic transition and greater stability in the region. He underlined that Canada has long condemned what it describes as Maduro's brutally oppressive and criminal regime, and has not recognized his leadership since elections in 2018 that Ottawa deemed illegitimate. Canada now stresses the importance of a peaceful and Venezuelan-led transition that respects the will of the Venezuelan people. What Carney did not do is condemn the illegal action of the United States president to invade a sovereign country and to, quote, kidnap the president of that country. I guess many could understand he is walking a bit of a tightrope to keep on the right side of the issue without making Donald Trump upset with Canada. Carney didn't stop at politics. He also touched on the economic implications of a changing Venezuelan landscape. Venezuela has some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, and if its oil sector rebounds, it could have significant effects on global markets. Carney addressed this directly, saying that Canadian oil will remain competitive even if Venezuelan oil output rises. He explained that Canadian crude is seen as a lower-risk investment due to stable governance, and he noted efforts to open new markets, including in Asia, to diversify Canada's export footprint. He also tied this back to broader infrastructure and energy policy, pointing to agreements with the Alberta government on carbon capture and pipeline projects designed to make Canadian oil both more accessible and more environmentally responsible in global markets. But Carney's reaction hasn't been without controversy. Some international voices argue that the U.S. military operation in Venezuela raises real concerns about international law and the rules-based order. A rules-based order that global leaders, including Carney, say must be upheld even as they welcome potential democratic change. Critics warn that such actions could undermine long-standing norms that govern state sovereignty and global conduct. I guess the real question is, as in the lead-up to the Second World War, our appeasement efforts in Canada could lead to emboldening not just the U.S., but other actors like China. They have wanted to invade Taiwan for years and have always held that it is one China, including Taiwan. Shifting back to Ukraine, Carney's focus has been on reinforcing Canada's support for Kyiv as part of broader Allied efforts. While concrete details from the latest talks in Paris are still emerging, the overarching theme is clear. Canada wants to be involved in shaping the future security architecture for Ukraine, including security guarantees and sustained diplomatic cooperation with partners like France, the UK, and others aligned against Russia's aggression. And it's not just high-level talks on the ground in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky recently appointed a Canadian, former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, as an economic advisor to help bolster Ukraine's financial resilience and post-war recovery planning. Her move underscores the depth of Canada's engagement, from political and military support to economic strategy and reconstruction planning. Taken together, these developments paint a picture of a Canadian Prime Minister actively engaging with some of the most urgent geopolitical flashpoints of our time. Whether it's advocating for democratic transition and economic opportunity in Venezuela, or reinforcing alliances and planning for Ukraine's long-term security, Carney is positioning Canada not on the sidelines, but squarely in the middle of complex global diplomacy. So as these stories continue to unfold, we'll keep tracking them, not just for what they mean today, but for how they could shape Canada's role in the world and the future of international cooperation in an increasingly uncertain era. Right now, a lot of Canadians are worried that any missteps could lead to a widening conflict and perhaps other major moves by countries to expand into places they have no legal rights to be. Just consider the recent comments by world leaders who state the mutual defense clause of the NATO agreement. Denmark has been solidifying the concept that if Trump makes good on his constant threats to take over Greenland, that the rest of the NATO alliance would need to step up and defend its sovereign soil. The fact that many world leaders signed support in a recent statement, and Canada was missing from that statement, left the world wondering what would happen if things did transpire, and a decision was needed on what side of the conflict Canada would fall. Well, thanks for joining me today, and please have a great day anyway. If you could like and subscribe, that would do a lot to help me, and check that bell icon on YouTube so you'll be notified when I upload more content. Thanks for stopping by, Worldwide Canadian. I'm Tim Clark. See you next time.